The cameras flashed.
Right.
The crowd they froze. And just like that, the media world had this terrifying new obsession. Welcome to Starscope Report.
We are so glad you are here with us.
Yeah, join us as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame. And today we are taking a deep dive into a story that has completely shattered the invisible wall between the broadcast desk and reality.
It really has.
We're unpacking the chilling disappearance of the 84-year-old mother of Today's Show co-anchor, Savannah Guthrie. Her name's Nancy Guthrie.
And just to give you an idea of how we're approaching this, we are pulling from a massive stack of sources to untangle everything.
Massive.
We've got on-the-ground reporting from AP News, CBS News. We're looking at timelines synthesized from Wikipedia, investigative analysis from ID Times.
Yep.
Even the actual FBI missing person poster, and some highly revealing transcripts from the True Crime Today podcast.
Which is super helpful. But before we really get into the mechanics of this case, I do want to add a quick note for you listening. This investigation intersects with some highly prominent political figures.
It does, yeah.
Like former President Donald Trump has publicly offered resources, and FBI Director Kash Patel has made some very pointed, very public statements about the local police handling the case.
Right.
Our mission in this deep dive is to look at the facts impartially. We aren't endorsing any political viewpoints from the left or the right. We're just, laying out what is in the source material so you can understand the mechanics of what actually happened.
Exactly, because when you look at the raw data of this case, it is baffling enough without any added political spin.
Baffling is the word. So let's start with the geography and the victimology. It's Saturday, January 31st, 2026. We are in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona.
A very quiet area.
Right. And Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old.
Yeah.
She is this beloved former PR worker for the University of Arizona, where she ran programs for medical students. Mentally, she is sharp as a tack. She has lived alone since 1988, actually, after her husband Charles died during a mining trip. But physically, she is incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah, that's a huge point.
She requires a pacemaker.
Yeah.
She takes daily medication for a chronic heart condition. The local sheriff actually specifically noted that she couldn't walk 50 yards by herself.
And that physical limitation, it's the critical anchor of this entire timeline, because the evening of January 31st is entirely routine.
Totally normal night.
Right. Nancy takes an Uber to her daughter Annie's house for dinner. Then, at 9:48 p.m., her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, drives her home.
Okay.
By 9:50 p.m., he drops her off, ensures she's inside, the garage door closes, and he drives away. He is literally the last known person to see her.
Then Sunday morning arrives. Nancy is a devoted, punctual churchgoer, but she completely misses her scheduled virtual church service.
Which is a huge red flag for her.
Huge. So a fellow church member calls the family. By 11:56 a.m. on Sunday, relatives arrive at her house to check on her.
And what they find is it's just awful.
The back doors are propped wide open. Her phone, her purse, everything she would need to travel, they are still inside.
Yeah.
And right near the front door, there's a trail of blood. And DNA testing quickly confirms that blood belongs to Nancy.
Which obviously triggers an immediate, massive escalation. The Pima County Sheriff's Department arrives. Sheriff Chris Nanos views the scene and explicitly states they believe she was taken against her will in the middle of the night.
I have to pause right here, though.
Yeah.
Because logistically, this defies physics.
It really does.
This isn't just a missing person case. This is a locked room mystery with a horrifying twist. Think about it. You're an 84-year-old woman who needs assistance to walk down her own street.
Right.
How do you move an uncooperative, immobile hostage out of a secure house in the dead of night, leaving nothing but her personal belongings and a blood trail?
Well, it demands a highly specific operational capability. Moving a physically fragile person requires lifting, carrying, or forcing them into a vehicle without dropping them.
Without making any noise.
Exactly. Without waking the neighbors and without leaving massive amounts of physical evidence behind, the absence of a chaotic, destructive struggle suggests either overwhelming immediate force or a highly calculated extraction.
Right now, you're probably listening and screaming at your phone. If they extracted her, didn't anybody see anything?
It's the logical question.
And that's where the digital footprint comes in. Because there actually was an eye on that front porch. Wait till you hear what the security cameras caught, or rather what they almost missed.
Yeah, let's look at the doorbell camera footage from 1:47 a.m. that Sunday morning. The FBI eventually released this, and it provides a highly detailed yet maddeningly clumsy profile of the suspect.
The image is pure nightmare fuel. I mean, you have a male suspect estimated between 5'9" and 5'10". He's wearing what investigators identified as a Hobo X mask.
Which sounds weird.
Yeah, for anyone unfamiliar, a Hobo X mask isn't some high-tech tactical gear. It's a generic, creepy, exaggerated latex mask.
Yeah.
You can buy it online or at a costume shop easily, which makes it virtually impossible to track via sales records.
Smart. In a twisted way.
And he's also wearing these massive oversized gloves.
Plus, he is carrying a 25-liter Ozark trail hiker pack. Now, that's a brand exclusively sold at Walmart,
Okay.
which gives investigators a massive retail database to comb through, though Walmart obviously sells thousands of those daily. But most alarmingly, he is armed. The footage shows a gun tucked awkwardly into a crotch holster.
But his behavior on the camera completely contradicts the idea of a tactical mastermind.
Oh, completely.
He walks up, realizes the camera's there, puts his head down, and tries to blind the lens using ivy from a nearby potted plant.
Right, just grabbing leaves.
But he can't get a grip on the leaves because his gloves are way too big, the material is wrinkling and folding over itself. It's almost pathetic.
It's a fascinating dichotomy. On one side, you have clear premeditation. Evidence suggests he scoped out the house 20 days prior on January 11th. He brought a mask, a weapon, a bag. But his execution on the porch is entirely improvised and clumsy. The oversized gloves suggest an intense fear of leaving fingerprints, but they destroy his manual dexterity.
Here is the truly mind-bending part about that footage, though. That doorbell camera did not have an active subscription.
This is the crazy part.
The homeowner wasn't paying for cloud storage. The suspect probably thought, no subscription, no recording, I'm a ghost. But 10 days later, the FBI and Google collaborated to pull that video anyway. How is that even mechanically possible?
It's because of how cloud infrastructure is engineered. Even when you don't pay for a Ring or Google Nest subscription, the camera still temporarily caches video on external servers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for functional redundancy, just to make the hardware operate smoothly on their end.
So recovering that footage is essentially like finding the imprint of a ransom note on the blank notepad underneath the page you ripped out.
That is a perfect analogy. Google had to look at the indents left on their server architecture. The FBI didn't just hack the camera. They subpoenaed Google to legally freeze that specific server rack.
Incredible.
They had to extract the video from the server's shadow memory before the automated 14-day overwrite cycle wiped it forever. It was a literal race against the server's own cleaning protocols.
That is an incredible piece of digital forensics. Because without that undeleted shadow file, they wouldn't have known about the communications that followed.
Right, the emails.
Local media in Tucson, specifically KOLD-TV and Harvey Levin over at TMZ, they start getting emails. The kidnapper demands $6 million in Bitcoin by February 9th.
$6 million.
And we all saw Savannah Guthrie's agonizing video plea on the Today Show, surrounded by her siblings, begging for proof of life and saying, "We will pay."
But the proof of life never comes. To verify the kidnapper's financial channels, law enforcement sets up what's called a Bitcoin test drop.
Okay, what is that?
They send $300 to the cryptocurrency wallet address provided in the emails.
What does a test drop actually achieve, though? I mean, $300 isn't going to satisfy a $6 million demand.
No, it acts as a digital tripwire. The FBI wants to see if the kidnapper tries to move the funds through a tumbler or a mixer.
A tumbler?
Yeah, which are services that rapidly bounce cryptocurrency across thousands of wallets to launder it and obscure the trail. If the kidnapper touches that $300, the FBI can map their digital laundering network.
Well, that makes sense.
But the kidnapper never withdrew it.
Which brings up a massive contradiction in this case.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that taking an 84-year-old is a huge logistical liability.
It is.
But wait, isn't an 84-year-old also the easiest possible target to physically overpower? If I'm a kidnapper looking for a quick payday, I'm not targeting a 30-year-old marathon runner. I'm targeting someone who can't fight back.
That's a fair point.
Couldn't her physical fragility just be a tactical choice for an easy ransom rather than a complex plot?
It is true that she is easily overpowered. But from a criminal profiling standpoint, if your primary goal is a prolonged, multi-million-dollar negotiation, a hostage who requires daily heart medication to survive is the worst possible target.
Because they might not make it.
Exactly. If she dies on day 2 from cardiac arrest, your leverage is entirely gone. The fact that the kidnapper bypassed private negotiations with the family and went straight to TMZ suggests the spectacle was the point.
Wow.
They wanted to inflict maximum public terror and humiliation on a famous family, and the money was perhaps secondary, which is probably why they never touched the digital tripwire.
That makes my blood run cold. They wanted an audience, and unfortunately our culture was more than ready to provide one.
Fascinating.
Hey, if you're gripped by how this media mystery is unfolding, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier twists ahead. Because once the internet got hold of this case, fiction completely bled into reality.
Oh, we truly entered the era of the armchair sleuth. The digital noise became deafening.
It was an absolute circus. You had true crime influencers traveling to Tucson, filming themselves trespassing in Nancy's neighborhood, looking for, clues for their TikToks.
Just terrible behavior.
But the thing that really sent the internet into a frenzy was a connection to Savannah Guthrie's own writing from her 2024 memoir.
Yes. A deeply unfortunate passage in retrospect.
In that book, Savannah describes a childhood game they used to play during the summer. Her cousin would stage these playful fake kidnappings of her and her sister,
Right.
hiding them and calling their parents from payphones to make fake demands. It was just an innocent family anecdote. But suddenly, with Nancy actually missing, thousands of online detectives grabbed that passage and called it a dark prophecy.
They went wild with it.
They started weaving this massive conspiracy theory.
Psychologists and behavioral analysts refer to this specific phenomenon as magical thinking.
What does that actually mean in a true crime context, though?
Well, magical thinking is the human brain's desperate attempt to assert control over a chaotic, terrifying situation through false pattern recognition.
Like seeing shapes and things.
Exactly, it's pareidolia. Like seeing a face in the clouds, but for events. When we see a coincidence that eerie, our brains chemically reward us for finding a clue, even when logically, it is just a haunting coincidence. We want the world to make narrative sense, like a movie.
But that magical thinking doesn't just stay in Reddit threads. It has devastating real-world consequences. The rumor mill peaked when News Nation's Ashley Banfield claimed on a podcast that a law enforcement source told her a family member might be the prime suspect.
Which was so damaging.
Instantly, the internet turned its crosshairs on Nancy's daughter Annie and her son-in-law Tommaso. Millions of strangers were vilifying a family living in absolute agony.
The collateral damage here is immense. Savannah had to use her platform to publicly defend her siblings, stating unequivocally that no one protected their mother more than them.
Right.
The local authorities even had to intervene. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos held a press conference solely to rebuke the speculation, confirming no family members were suspects.
But from an investigative standpoint, does it really matter if a bunch of podcasters are spinning theories? I mean, does it actually hurt the police work?
Immeasurably. It is an operational nightmare.
Really?
Yes. When the public floods FBI and local police tip lines with thousands of theories based on memoir excerpts rather than actual physical sightings, it completely clogs the investigative machinery. Analysts have to legally log, review, and clear every single tip.
Oh, man.
The signal-to-noise ratio drops to 0. Law enforcement spends precious hours putting out digital fires instead of tracking the real suspect.
Which perfectly transitions into the shocking friction behind the scenes between local police and the FBI that nobody saw coming. Later in the deep dive, we'll talk about this friction, because as the internet chased ghosts, the actual investigation hit a wall.
Yeah, we reached the 100-day mark and the institutional frustration just boiled over.
Let's look at the dead ends they chased down in those 100 days. There was a traffic stop in Rio Rico, Arizona, which is about 60 miles south of Tucson. They detained a guy, tore apart a property, and cleared him entirely.
Nothing there.
Then there was a major SWAT operation just 2 miles from Nancy's home. They seized a gray Range Rover from a Culver's restaurant parking lot. Again, nothing.
And perhaps the most heartbreaking false hope, investigators found a pair of oversized gloves discarded 2 miles away that looked exactly like the ones from the doorbell video.
That sounds like a huge break.
You'd think so, but when the DNA came back, it belonged to a local restaurant worker who had absolutely nothing to do with the crime.
Because the physical evidence and the digital traps yielded 0 actionable leads, the political pressure skyrocketed. And that is exactly what caused a historic public fracture between the FBI and local police.
It got very messy.
You do not usually see badges clash in public. But FBI Director Kash Patel went on Sean Hannity's podcast and took a direct, aggressive shot at Pima County Sheriff Nanos.
Yeah, Patel claimed that the FBI wasn't brought into the investigation for 4 critical days, despite the Bureau having a plane and specialized agents ready to go on day 1.
4 days.
He heavily implied that local police delayed critical evidence handling and scene preservation.
I understand the interagency ego clash, but what does that actually mean for the justice process? I mean, if they catch this guy on high-definition video tomorrow, who cares what the FBI director said on a podcast?
A defense attorney cares deeply.
Why?
In the legal world, there are doctrines known as the chain of custody and the fruit of the poisonous tree. If you are a defense attorney, Kash Patel just handed you the ultimate pretrial motion to suppress evidence.
Oh, I see where this is going.
You walk into court, play the FBI director's own words to the judge, and argue, Your Honor, the top law enforcement officer in the country admits the local police mismanaged the first 4 days. The crime scene was compromised. Therefore, any evidence collected is tainted.
Wow.
Publicly airing these grievances creates institutional cracks that the defense will exploit to establish reasonable doubt from day one.
So the top brass is essentially sabotaging their own future courtroom strategy out of pure frustration.
Exactly.
But despite the dead ends and the departmental infighting, there's one single strand of hope left. We talked about the gloves being a false match, but investigators did find a single trace strand of DNA at Nancy's house, and that is currently being processed at the FBI's state-of-the-art lab in Quantico, Virginia.
And this is where we have to separate television forensics from actual science.
Yeah, it's not CSI.
No, on a procedural drama, they put a hair in a machine and a face pops up on a monitor 10 minutes later. That's not reality.
Well, how do you actually get a full human profile from one single microscopic skin cell or hair follicle?
Through a process called PCR, or polymerase chain reaction amplification. Because a trace cell doesn't have enough readable genetic material on its own, scientists have to use thermal cycling.
Which is what, exactly?
It's heating and cooling the sample with specific enzymes to chemically copy that tiny strand of DNA millions of times until the sample is large enough to read.
But if you're artificially multiplying a microscopic sample millions of times, doesn't that make the process incredibly delicate?
Extremely delicate. That is why it takes months, not hours. If a single dust particle from the technician's glove gets into the sample before the PCR process, the machine will multiply the technician's DNA along with the suspects.
And ruin the evidence.
Ruining it completely. Eliminating contamination, extracting the viable trace, and building forensic genealogy trees requires absolute painstaking perfection.
So we wait. We just wait on a microscope in Virginia, surrounded by sterile glass, to tell us who was standing on that porch in Arizona.
Which brings this entire technological and political saga back to the profound human tragedy at its center.
Yes, let's bring it back to Savannah Guthrie. She has returned to the broadcast desk at the Today Show, but she is operating under incredibly strict, heartbreaking protocols.
I can't even imagine.
The network has implemented a sequester system. If tragic news breaks about her mother while they are live on air, producers have a coordinated plan to pull her off the set immediately. That way, she doesn't learn about her mother's fate from a teleprompter or a breaking news graphic.
It is an agonizing state of suspended animation.
It really is.
The family has put a $1 million reward on the table for information, but they've also channeled their grief into action. They donated $500,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to help fund the search for others while they wait for answers of their own.
It really leaves you with a chilling thought to mull over as we close this deep dive out. Think about the era we live in. We all have high-definition cameras in our pockets.
Everywhere.
Ring doorbells are watching every single porch in America. Law enforcement can subpoena cloud shadow memory. Thousands of internet sleuths are analyzing every frame of footage online. And yet an 84-year-old woman who needs a pacemaker can still vanish into thin air. Is it possible that in this era of total unavoidable surveillance, a criminal's greatest advantage isn't hiding in the shadows, but hiding inside the endless deafening noise of our true crime-obsessed culture?
It's a profound question. I mean, does the sheer volume of digital noise, the false tips, the podcast rumors, the fake ransom notes, does it provide the perfect camouflage for a real monster?
It makes that locked room mystery feel less like an internet puzzle and more like a terrifying warning. You've been listening to Starscope Report, where we uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.